Hi everyone, thank you for viewing our presentation. JT Story and myself, Bailey Spelman, will be covering ethnography for our group learning facilitation project. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So what is ethnography? Ethnography is a qualitative research method that stems from anthropology and sociology. In this design, the researcher acts as a human instrument that processes information. They look for shared patterns of behaviors, language, and actions among a group within their natural setting, ideally over a prolonged period of time. In ethnographic research, data collection often involves observations and interviews, and the information is typically observed and recorded. Here's a general overview of the ethnographic research process. So, the researcher begins by selecting a problem or topic of interest, which will shape the rest of the research design. Like other research methods, ethnography is informed by theory. So theory can help the researcher define the problem, figure out how to tackle it, and provide a deeper understanding of their findings. Ethnography is also exploratory in nature, where fieldwork is at the heart of research design. And we'll get more into those details in a bit. And during the analysis stage, the researcher reconfigures the data to draw an overall picture of how a group or system works. As mentioned earlier, ethnography comes from anthropology, so here are some of the key anthropological concepts that guide researchers in their fieldwork. Cultural interpretation is perhaps the most important. It involves the researcher's ability to describe what they've observed through the lens of the group under study, which is why it's important for researchers to observe groups in their native environments. Researchers also assume a holistic perspective in order to gain a comprehensive picture of a cultural or social group. This may include descriptions of the group's history, religion, politics, their economy, etc. Contextualization of data is also important. This involves the researcher placing a concept in the group's lived experience before determining its meaning. And non-judgmental orientation is key for preventing the researcher from making inappropriate or unnecessary value judgments throughout their research. Symbols and rituals may help the researcher make sense of their observations, providing a framework to classify and categorize behaviors. And lastly, reflexivity prompts researchers to consider how their personal background and experiences, as well as their role in the study, may influence their interpretations and the meanings they ascribe to the data. Next, we'll move on to methods. So, as previously mentioned, the researcher acts as the primary measurement tool in ethnography. And I thought this quote from David Federman captured this concept well. So here it says, ethnographers are human instruments dependent on all their senses for data collection and analysis. Fieldwork is the hallmark of research for sociologists and anthropologists, so it makes sense that it would be at the heart of ethnographic research as well. Fieldwork is most commonly conducted face-to-face, hence the importance of observing people in their native environments. However, fieldwork can also be conducted online or via digital methods. The research questions guide the selection of the place and group to study. David Federman also explains how most ethnographers use the quote-unquote big net approach in their research. They'll start by making broad observations, interacting with several individuals within the site and population, and then as the study progresses, they'll narrow their focus to a specific portion of the population to study. And interviews are also critical to ethnographic research. They allow the researcher to explain and put into a larger context what they see and experience. It's also important for the researcher to identify their data recording procedures, so the protocols for their observations and interviews. What types of questions are they asking? Are they making descriptive or reflexive notes? Are they audio taping? Things of that nature. Researchers may also use other techniques and measures to supplement their data collection. So projective techniques, which can help the researcher elicit cultural or perhaps psychological information from the individuals they're studying. Other records like written and electronic information can be really helpful and save the researcher time in their data collection. Kinesics, which is being sensitive to body language when making observations, so making note of the individuals, how they're behaving when they're in their lived environments. and folk tales, which can transmit cultural values and lessons across generations of people and groups.
On this slide, we are going to discuss the ethnographic writing styles and how to write ethnographically. Ethnographers have an important commitment as researchers and scholars to context, understanding, and the human interpretation of the content. By using mixed methods, we as researchers and as the measurable instrument can continue to further understand contextual data and dissect it to create solutions that are useful to a research topic. Ethnographic studies most often analyze a matter that could be in demand of reform and improvement based upon personal accounts of the human experience in relation to that matter. Written ethnographies are essentially an analysis of dialogue and interpretation of that dialogue. Ethnographer is going to conduct the context heavy fieldwork and display that data. It's important to present the evidence and the comparisons to further connect with the readers. The ethnographies are going to be a blend of narrative analysis and recognizable quantitative and qualitative patterns throughout a study. Some common ethnographic writing practices when trying to write ethnographically starts by collecting the contextual based data through various mixed methods. We're going to provide scholarly interpretation of data by observing patterns within the research and then going on to form reformative and new possible directions that align with the results. Using data from interviews and field notes, then we can use color coding and visualization methods when we're writing, as well as summarization of ethnographic data. We're going to study the participants and the observations. Then we're going to study the facilitation of the relationships that we've viewed. Then you provide statistics, research patterns, implications to the focused field, new directions, and opportunities for the field. There's a lot of information for this slide, so I'll try to be quick with how I describe it. There's levels of manipulation that are required when you're writing ethnographically and viewing the research materials. So a plain ethnography that we use in social sciences is going to be simply interviews and field work and describing the data that you have observed. That's your most traditional form. Enhanced ethnographies are going to be what I'm a little bit more biased towards because they provide more descriptors, stories, perspectives, and context. And when you're writing ethnographically, I think that's really important to do when you are connecting to readers, is to provide more context. An example of semi-fictionalized ethnography, I had to write this way in my undergrad for an ethnographic research assignment where I was interviewing and studying the undocumented community. And in order to keep people safe, keep their lives private, and respect their privacy, I performed interviews and did field work, but we changed the names, we changed the locations and the times. So all of the data is still as given, but everything is changed for privacy concerns. And there's other reasons for this as well, but that is just an example of why semi-fictionalized ethnographies might be important. Fictionalized ethnographies are a little bit more for entertainment, journalism, folklore, storytelling. I would say that this is used less in social sciences, but it is a form of entertainment and can be beneficial as well. With ethnographic data analysis, it's important to start off by removing as much bias from the research study as possible. I think personally that this helps the reader connect to you more, the colleagues and the people that we submit our ethnographic studies to take us more seriously and trust our work more. Another thing to start off with is to describe the analytical approaches that we use throughout the research. We're going to theorize and use literature analysis review from previous studies that coexist and align with our current study. This is a good way to do comparative analysis because you're taking your current study and comparing it to those who have done it before you. Show how it's similar, show how you've progressed and improved this study, essentially. Another important topic to discuss is the linguistic representation and the communication discourse that's going to be analyzed. So you're not only analyzing the words that are being discussed in your interviews, but you're analyzing tone, body language, how someone may seem comforted or discomforted while they're speaking about something. Discourse and communication and linguistic analysis is not just words. It's how words make you feel when you're saying them. And it's important to, as an ethnographer, be aware of those different discrepancies in the research.
Now that we've covered the key components of ethnography, we're going to move into our learning activity. So please go ahead and pause our presentation to watch this TED Talk by Ellen Isaacs. I thought it was a really interesting video that explained ethnography in a digestible way. Once you're done, please come back and view the next slide.